All right, welcome everybody for a continued series that we've been doing with our partners and our sponsors to provide resources for entrepreneurs, really break things down, and again, make the best of the time that we have at home and useful in terms of the webinars. Tom, this is Tom's second webinar that we're doing, just to do a follow-up. I think a very interesting topic, really relevant topic with, again, what you can do to increase the value of your business, again, as the climate changes, adjusts. I think right now people can keep in mind in terms of what specific steps that they can be doing to really kind of figure out the growth elements as well. So with that, Tom, I'm going to go ahead and have you kick it off and go ahead and start.
Great. Thank you so much, Amin. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome, I guess, to month 3 of COVID-19, it feels like. I think we're on month 3 at this point. Hopefully your life is starting to get back to normal, like ours is starting to open up and do the same. So it's a great day, great follow-up from our last discussion that we had in the markets when we had about 40, 50 people on the line. By the way, market's up 921 points today. Some of the things that we had talked about last time was that this might be a faster recovery than we think. So the jobs report came out today, and it was expected that we would have negative losses, right? We'd have losses in jobs today, and it was plus 2.5 million. So really strong jobs report. But that's not why we're here. Today, I'm partnering with a special guest. His name's Steve Capizzi. He is the owner of Apex Exit Advisors. So we're going to talk to him in a minute, and he's going to do the bulk of the presentation today. But if you've seen my bio at all or in my email taglines, I am what's called a Certified Exit Planning Advisor. A CEPA or a CEPA is what we call it in the industry. So when you think of that, when you think of exit planning, a lot of business owners think about obviously selling a company, walking away. And a lot of people may say to this segment today, saying, well, that's great, but I'm not selling. And really what we're here to talk about today is that exit planning is really more about business planning, about executing your business plan to a high level that it adds value so you're always prepared to sell. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But we're also going to talk about what the CEPA does, someone with this designation, and what we call it is the value acceleration methodology. So Steve's really going to go deep dive into that. Like I said, exit planning is really just good business execution and good business planning. But a lot of business owners aren't thinking that way, right? A lot of folks run what's called lifestyle businesses. So what that means is they go to work every day. They're trying to maximize their income every day and go home, which is a great thing to do. But a lot of times business owners are leaving money on the table because they're not maximizing their income, but also maximizing the value of your company. So we're going to talk with Steve about that. So one thing about Steve is he's also a CEPA, but he's also the president of the Exit Planning Institute here in Georgia. So it's an organization of advisors and folks that come together that talk about these issues of what's happening with business owners and the environment. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Steve, and I'll help you address any questions and things like that. But he's got a presentation ready to go. So Steve, if you want to go to your Zoom and share content up at the top right corner, that'd be great.
Okay, you need to allow me to share the screen.
So at the very top, it says green, says share content.
Hey, Steve, I just went ahead and made you co-host. You should now be able to do that.
Okay, hang on here. Here we go. All right. Is it up there?
You got it.
All right. Okay, so I certainly appreciate that introduction, Tom, and certainly it is an honor and privilege to be with TIE. Certainly it's a great organization. I kind of looked up on y'all's website, and certainly a lot of companies that have done very well for themselves. So it's really an honor and privilege to be here. And since we only have a limited amount of time, I'm just going to dive into what we kind of call value acceleration methodology. And as Tom pointed out to you, is that we're both connected to the Exit Planning Institute here. And the Exit Planning Institute has their own set of methodology, and there's some other methodologies out there, but I kind of, over the last 24 years myself, I've created my own methodology that I've basically shared with manufacturing companies, distribution companies, service companies, as well as other types of industries. Now, in the high-tech space, which I understand TIE has a lot of business owners in, this is still applicable. But of course, we also know that high tech has its own set of value drivers that also increases the business as well. So I do believe that you're going to get a lot out of this today. So why don't we go ahead and get started here. I'm going to go ahead and just, I had some bonus content here, but I think given the time period, we're going to kind of fast forward and just kind of get into what we're about to talk about today. So first of all, just to kind of lay the land, valuations and M&A right now. Before COVID-19, it was all-time highs. Certainly, I think in the next 6 to 12 months, as maybe Tom pointed out, we're going to have some challenges, with buyers and sellers kind of meeting together with their expectations. But I do believe that the economy is starting to have more of a swoosh type takeover, which is very positive that Tom, shared out. Also, too, I think, during this time of period, obviously it rattled a lot of business owners, and a lot of business owners, basically plowed through it. But these owners are a little bit exasperated, and I think some of the market's going to go after them with more of a lower valuation. And with the lower valuation will be more structural enhancements, such as like stocks, earnouts, purchase price adjustments. So they're going to try to put a lot of more cash up front. So negotiations for this M&A activity right now is going to be a little longer. There's going to be a much more deeper dive in due diligence, and it's going to take longer. Just a lot more justification that's going to be needed. And, both sides are, when they're at the table, the attorneys are really going to hone in on the reps and warranties that take place in these deals. And it's going to just increase closing risk. But I can say this, in the next 6 to 12 months, there will be some challenges ahead of proper valuation. So that's why I think this time right here that we got right now is a great time for all the owners here to pause and basically just kind of reassess your investment vision for your company, for your business. Because when you really get down to it, the question that you should be asking yourself, with business owners is, what do you really want to get out of your investment? And it's going to, be a lot of questions that kind of come up underneath that umbrella question. One question is going to be like, what's your valuation number? Another is going to be like your business goals, your financial goals, your family goals, personal goals. All the business owners on here know that being in private business, there's a lot of external things that kind of vie for your time that may impede your value enhancement. And so it's important to kind of, flush all these out to really understand where you're going. And of course, Tom's group does a very good job about determining how much is enough, because that's one of the key items that a business owner needs to understand when they're looking at, what their investment vision is. And of course, your time frame, to do it, whether it's a year or 10 years that you're looking to, exit out. But at the end of the day, we can all say that it's best to start with the end in mind. Now, the end in mind is going to be different for, a lot of different people. And, with the purchase price as it is, certainly that's important. But really behind that purchase price is really a much more softer, needs there, because that business is going to create that net worth for you. And that net worth, once you get it liquidated, is going to create a cash flow. And that cash flow is going to create a lifestyle. And that lifestyle is going to have you on your family and friends and what's important to you, your hobbies and such. And, even a legacy, whether it's a personal legacy, a charitable legacy. And it really all comes down to, this is really what satisfies you, the emotional well-being. So it's really important for the owner to really understand what their hierarchy of needs are that they really want to achieve out of this investment. And I think this value acceleration methodology can help you. But there's going to be people in your way, naysayers, investors, lenders, buyers. And these buyers are industry buyers, financial buyers, strategic buyers. And if you really think about it, all of them have kind of a common thread of a commonality. They're evaluators of risk. And we know through lots of studies of business owners, there's like 5 big characteristics that make business owners who they are and successful. And one of them is that, you're kind of risk averse. You're not risk averse. I mean, you will go and plow into that risky investment, that risk there to succeed with your objectives. And so really owners need to kind of understand the game that is being played with these naysayers. And we'll get into that a little bit. Another thing that's kind of standing in your way, the studies basically show, is you as a business owner. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, Bo Burlington, who's the Inc. editor for Inc. magazine, he wrote a book, How to Finish Big, and he probably interviewed about 300 business owners, all different industries, and it kind of came away where the people who achieved their end in mind and they were really satisfied, they were very self-aware of themselves, their capabilities, and also their business awarenesses too, which allowed them to chart the course, to plan. And we know that a lot of business owners are not really planning very well. And Tom's going to kind of share with you a little bit about the state of owner readiness that the Exit Planning Institute conducted back in 2018. Tom?
Yep. So I'm going to flip over to me.
You want me to stop share?
Nope, I got it.
All right.
And it'll flip over to my computer here in a moment. All right, so I think we're up and running, right? Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
So this study was actually conducted by EPI and also Steve's group here. So what this survey did, this is actually specific to Georgia. This is the State of Owner Readiness Survey for the state of Georgia. And so there was a group of business owners interviewed, and this was the size of company that was interviewed and surveyed. So you can see the majority of the companies surveyed were below 5 million, but really up to about 25 million. So about almost 80% of the people who responded to this survey were probably in that demographic that you see a lot of folks that are in Thai and looking at our demographic here. So when I look forward to the industry level, as far as what industries were surveyed, you can see here, these are the types of companies that were interviewed and what they represent. You can see technology, which represents a decent portion here, was in the single digits here, but we've got all different types of companies represented as well, and different age groups as well. And one of the questions that was posed was, having a transition strategy important for my future and the business. And you can see with this, almost 91% of respondents agreed that that was something that was important for their future, as something that they needed to plan for. And then when you talk about specific as far as what planning they have done, you can see here statistics show that a lot of people, even though that 91% of business owners indicated this was a very strong thing that they needed to consider, a lot of people didn't even have a written plan, hadn't thought about it, and a small minority had actually spent some time thinking about what their plan would be. And then 37% of the people surveyed indicated they'd like to have a transition plan and transition in the next 5 years or less. But as you can see, there's a disconnect here where a lot of folks are thinking about transitioning, but they have no formal transition plan in place in this time. And this is one of the big things that I hear a lot in talking to the business owners as we talk about going through an exit potential, or even down the road, is a lot of times the business owner, their retirement plan is really saying, okay, I'm going to keep the company in the family. They're going to take it over, and I'm just going to collect dividend checks forever, which obviously means that they're going to rely on the profitability of the company to provide their lifestyle in retirement. And you can see that's a critical element of business owners of what they're expecting as far as their retirement plan and their transition plan. And so this shows you what business planning has actually been done. A a lot of times, you know, some people may have done a business valuation, but we find more often than not, a lot of people haven't even executed a formal business valuation to see what their company is worth. And so when you talk about the value of the company and you talk to different business owners, a lot of them say, and you can see according to the study, that 58% of the people surveyed said they have a good idea what their business is worth, right? But when we look at their actual actions, have you completed a formal pre-transition value enhancement or due diligence? 80% of those same people have never done anything formalized. So what we call this is like the country club conversation. A lot of time they get their country club valuation from meeting someone at their club or business associates, and they say, oh, I know a company that sold for X. And so they automatically assume that's the value of their company. And that is, that can't be, you know, further from the truth and reality of what actually happens. So as I move forward here, like I said, 80% haven't done any formal planning as well. And then on top of that, you know, as far as your team that you currently have at your company, are you prepared to grow the company and have them take over and be the sole source of your income? And you're finding a lot of people that we're relying on people that only 24%, as you can see, key management is aware of the value of the business and that you're going to rely on these people to make sure that they generate your income for you. And you can see here, over half the respondents said they need a business to support their lifestyle. So like Steve was talking about, that's a lot of the work that we do in the financial modeling process, is to make sure that we can come up with alternatives if the company is not the way that you're going to generate income in retirement. And so when we talk about transition planning and getting your documents drawn up, you can see here, this is what statistics show as far as the actual documents that are in place. So the majority only have a will in place, but a lot of folks don't have a written action plan. And also something that we'll talk about, and maybe Steve will touch upon, is personal readiness. A lot of people talk about having their business ready to go, but a lot of times people go to sell their company and they're not personally ready to transition. So they haven't thought about what they're going to do after they sell. They don't know how they're going to generate income. So when people go to sell a company and try to engage in that process, only 20% of the time do those transactions actually occur, because majority of the time they're not personally ready to enter into the next phase of their life. And then the same thing, a lot of those who had tax minimization plans, only 31% indicated it was up to date. So they may have done something many years ago, but really haven't kept up with it. And here's another interesting stat, is that 51% of business owners indicated that they don't have a contingency plan for the business. So, you know, if they're forced to exit, we find that a lot of people wind up selling due to distress or divorce or, you know, things outside of their control, instead of exiting on their own terms. And this was just an interesting stat I wanted to make sure I pulled up here, was talking about updating your buy-sell agreement if you have more than one partner. A lot of folks have it written up or don't have it at all. And they're usually outdated or lacking. And I'll just finish with this here, is as far as all the advisors that are on your transition team, a lot of people just go to their attorney or CPA and have them do a transition. But it's really important to have someone in the exit planning space and also a financial advisor to help you generate that cash flow modeling to help you guide you in as far as saving taxes and things like that. So only 46% of owners specified their wealth manager is on their transition team. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Steve.
Okay, great. Oops.
Am I still in there?
Hang on, I clicked the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So and everyone else in the attendee room, please go ahead and submit your questions in the Q&A. I know that, you know, both Steve and Tom are covering some good information. So if you guys have any thoughts or any concerns or just anything in general that you want to ask while we have, you know, both gentlemen on the call, feel free to either send it in the Q&A or in the chat. Over to you, Steve.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that was really great that Tom laid out about being prepared, and you're going to go forward and start your end in mind. But in the end in mind, what kind of value are you going for in the marketplace? Just checking in. Everybody can see the screen. Everybody see the screen?
We can see you and I, but not your screen. So you got to share content.
Okay. All right. Let's see here.
There you go. It's starting.
There you go.
Yep, we got it.
Okay. So, oops, let's go. So what I was sharing with everybody is that as we go forward, with this end in mind, how to exit on your own terms, you have to understand what kind of value world that you're going to want to go for to build value in, because there's some confusion in the marketplace. Basically fair market value is really a federal law, and it was developed by the Internal Revenue Code 59-60. And that standard of value is only really used for, let's say, estate planning purposes, gift standing purposes, ESOPs, or charitable remainder trust. It's not really conducive for the deal-making transactions that are in the marketplace. What's really happens in the marketplace, and I get my laser pointer here, is investment value. You have strategic companies out there that are looking for value in specific assets. And when they go to look for value in specific assets, they're looking at business owners, and they're looking inside of that business. And this is what we're going to be talking about today, of how to increase the value of your business through your intrinsic value. So what is the concept of intrinsic value? Basically, it's your company's cash flow that possesses three characteristics: sustainability, predictability, and transferability. These are the three drivers that are going to drive intrinsic value. And what the intrinsic value really is qualitative factors of your business. It's basically favorable characteristics of your business, a strong framework of your business. That is what's going to increase the intrinsic value. So these value drivers of high processes, favorable characteristics, once you get them in place, that means a strategic plan is going to drive into your quantitative value, and your quantitative value is then going to create more enterprise value for you. And so what owners don't really understand is that you have control over your intrinsic value within your company. And the stronger you build out your intrinsic value, the more options you're going to have. Kind of let me give you an example here. So here is an example of two owners, and they're identical regarding age, type of business, revenue, EBITDA. And in the middle here, these are characteristics of a business. And so when we look at company A here, I'm going to call company A the owner Larry Lifestyle. He really doesn't have a lot of product development going on or market development. And he's running his company with worn out equipment, and he has a very weak management team. He really doesn't do any kind of strategic planning whatsoever. His information systems are very antiquated. So it's really kind of almost a dictatorship. What Larry says goes. And so it's more of a lifestyle business. He wants to minimize his taxes, take his $3 million and go play. But when it comes time to sell his business, Larry may be very surprised. So let's compare Larry's business to Dan over here, company B. I'm calling him Dan Diligent, okay? Dan he has robust product development. He has robust market development. He's got state-of-the-art equipment. His management team is very broad and deep, His information system, state-of-the-art, he can really get some good data analytics going there. His financial reporting is highly disciplined. A lot of controls are in place. So the question that I have, to the owners that are on this call if we were to take both companies to market at the same time, which do you think will sell for a higher value and sell faster? Company A or Company B? What do y'all think? Of course, Company B, right? Company B is going to do that. So let's figure out how we can go about determining how to increase intrinsic value. And we do that through a business assessment of the business. So here are 8 categories that are up there on the screen here. And we got 47 other subcategories that we're going to take a look at. And we're probably going to ask about, 400, maybe even 500 questions in analyzing the business. So as we do this, I want y'all to think of it this way. What we're actually doing for the owner is performing a reverse due diligence. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's been so many times in the marketplace, right? And y'all may have experienced it yourself on this call here, is that owners will get a phone call or knock at the door that a buyer wants to buy his or her business, right? And so the owner gets all excited, you know, a nice big LOI comes across the table, and the owner says, okay, yes, you know, signs the LOI. So now that buyer starts performing due diligence on the company. They start lifting up the hood, you know, they're starting to dive in to see what's there. And they start finding a lot of risks. They start finding a lot of cracks, you know, in their business system. And so now the buyer is starting to do purchase price adjustments. And so, you know, the owner really wants this to happen. And so he gets, or she gets very emotional about it. And many times they go and cave into the buyer on the purchase price adjustments, and they would be leaving money on the table, because if they would have done this process that I'm going to explain to you in a few minutes here, they would have, you know, gotten more money in the end. So think of this as reverse due diligence. You want to do this type of process long before, so that you can be ready anytime that a buyer knocks on your door, gives you a call, or you're ready to go to market for your exit. So we're going to dive into all these categories. We're going to be talking to you about your target market, leadership communications, you know, your incentive plans for your people, sales team, market positioning, you know, your supply chain, your financial controls. You know, we're going to basically do a deep dive. And as we do this, what's going to bubble up to the surface is company-specific risk. And company-specific risk is, you know, the risks that I was talking to you about, the naysayers, that they all have in common. This is what they're talking about: customer concentration. You know, you're a PO company versus a multi-year contract company. Your product is discretionary versus non. You know, you sell commodity products. You got several competitors in your marketplace. You have a weak management team. All these are going to detract value from your company. And it's very, I don't want to say easy, but with effort by the owner, and remember, the owner has control over this, you can remedy this and increase the value, whereas the intrinsic value basically looks more predictable, sustainable, and transferable for that owner. So once we do all that, we're going to create an overall quality score from 0 to 100. And the best way to kind of look at this is that when we look at each category of business, we want to understand how fully developed and how efficient it's running. So really, an owner should have the bar charts all the same length, because that's when you know that every category in your business, or every department, however you want to say it, is fully developed and operating efficiently with one another. But when you have bar charts that are lower than some of the other ones, that means, you know, you have weaknesses or things that need to be addressed within that. Once we do that, now we kind of look at it from a perspective of risk, as I shared before. We'll score each of the categories, and then we accumulate it, and then we're going to plot it on this risk spectrum here. And in this particular situation, this company had a medium high risk. And this is how it's viewed by lenders, investors, and buyers. So really, when you're thinking about what we're trying to do is we're taking your current state, we're assessing your current state, right? We're doing that reverse due diligence, and we want to make a transformation. And we're making a transformation without any additional revenue, right? What we're doing is we're lowering that discount rate. We're lowering that company-specific risk where buyers, investors, lenders are looking at your company and basically saying, hey, you know, their cash flow stream is predictable, sustainable, more transferable. They're a high value, you know, business. So we're taking it from a current state to a future state with, again, without additional revenue. So the deliverables will be that,
Hey,
intrinsic that, yes.
Hey, I just wanted, you had a question that was pertaining to the biz assessment list. We had a question from Dan, so I figured you can answer live. Was it prioritized by importance?
So yes, so depending upon the, as I call it, the runway of the business owner, when you're doing a business assessment, obviously there's going to be a lot of recommendations. And yes, based off of what the goals and objectives are of the business owner, you're going to prioritize. So you can take the bigger rocks, and sometimes the bigger rocks may not be the highest value for your bang for the buck. You follow what I'm saying? So depending upon what the owner wants to do, so it's a mutual collaboration between the owner as far as what we want to accomplish as we go forward to remove out of the business. Is that good? All
Dan,
right.
we hope that answers your question. Thanks.
Thank you. So in the deliverable, basically, we're establishing what the intrinsic value is. Then we're basically giving recommendations in 3 different levels: a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3. And so really, you know, once you complete level 1, then you should be moving the needle of your company value. When you complete level 2 and 1, then it goes up again. And then of course, level 3 moves it again. And these are, you know, year by year improvements that we're trying to do. Now we kind of break it down on 90-day sprints, okay? And of course, again, it depends on what the owner's goals and objectives are and the time horizon that we have in order to do all of this. So what I just kind of gave you was, you know, kind of a deep dive in like building out your company here. But really, when you think about it, there's more of an overall process to grow the value of your company. And these are the 5 stages of value growth that basically I got copyrighted, and I'm having a book coming out toward the end of the year here. So why don't we go through each of the stages? The first stage is what I call market growth. And that's when the owner really is not even in control of the value of their business from an increasing standpoint. He's just leaving it up for revenue increases through national, regional, local, or even industry influence. And so it's a very passive approach. It's organic. And amazingly, a lot of business owners do this passive approach, and they never really go beyond this. And that's what, you know, Tom and I were talking about in that State of the Owner Readiness study. And so they become unprepared when they go to market, and they have, you know, expectations that are below from a value standpoint than what buyers want to give them. So the second build out well, the second stage is the business build out. And I kind of look at it as I'm a big fan of home stream makeovers. So, you know, when you look at this home, you know, it's bought, it has a value. And then when you do all the wiring, fix up the rooms, get a basement, nice, you know, furniture and stuff in there, paint it, it's going to look like this, right? So obviously you're going to sell that house for much more money than what it was before. Well, that's kind of the same concept of the business build out. And we are doing the business assessment in that. And in that business assessment, you saw one of the categories we're planning. We find that a lot of business owners don't have a strategic operational plan. And that's very key. You know, lenders, buyers, investors want to understand where you're going, right? So we'll basically create that. And I have a slide in a minute that will show you. Obviously, we're going to look at the relevancy of the business model. And as we complete the plan, we're going to be executing this within all the business departments. The objectives and strategies will be communicated within the departments. And as we're doing this, if you think about it, there's going to be these, remember, company-specific risks that we showed. We're going to be basically building out your other departments as we do this. So here's a strategic planning framework that we use. You have your vision, you have your mission, you have your values. That's your 5 years outlook. And then your current state, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then PEST, a lot of owners don't understand this, but it's politics, environment, social, and even technology, which obviously this is kind of relevant today. And then of course your model. You know, you work on your objectives and your strategies. It flows into, you know, your departments. And then of course we have your tactics that are going to execute there and actions. Now, of course, this is all done right up here above the line with your management team. And of course, communicated with your operating plan to the staff below. So again, you know, these are qualitative factors that we're helping that owner build out, which, of course, as we said before, will increase the intrinsic value of your company. So now, once the company is built out, has a nice, strong foundation, now we want to improve the operational efficiency of it. And really, you know, operations is about input, processes, and output. And it really doesn't matter what you have. You know, the name of the game is to make it very efficient. And a lot of owners are just satisfied with just meeting price, quality, and timing. And I think, you know, in our competitive environment today, to try to get a premium price for your revenues and services, if you stay down here, you know, your effectiveness, you know, may be depleted, because there's always going to be someone up here that are shooting for you and trying to improve, which will exceed, you know, the price that you can deliver, the quality, and the time you request. What's best is for you to be up here, you know, delivering specific customer solutions, delivering, you know, solutions for opportunities and problems that customers have. So you really want to be a disruptor. That's your ideal position from operational value standpoint. So now you have the system built, right? It's flowing good, it's very efficient. And so let's just kind of go back to stage 2. We built out the marketing department. We built out the sales department here. So now we have the framework to really throughput all the revenue that we're going to accumulate in. But how do we do that? Well, in talking to, you know, several sales, you know, gurus, it's really based off of behavioral incentive. It's comp plans. You're going to incentivize your people to go out to put the pedal to the metal and gain, you know, more revenue for the company. Now, what happens sometimes in that is that owners may not like their salespeople to make more money than what they're paying themselves in salary, right? And sometimes that's a big, you know, apple to kind of swallow for the owner. But if you're looking at the long-term vision of it, what you're doing is you're adding a lot of, you know, cash flow to the bottom line, which again, when you're building out your company from an intrinsic value standpoint, you're going to be moving, you know, your multiple needle, you know, upstream there. So it's going to pay off for you in the long run. So once we have stage 4, put it to the pedal, we've done everything what we possibly can. Hey, what's the easiest way to grow? Through acquisitions, right? So you need to create a plan as to what is the right strategy, you know, for you to acquire companies to add value to your business. And the first one, obviously, is a horizontal integration. It's basically buying your competition. And what you're doing is you're eliminating your competition here. Then we have market extension, which now you're taking your products and services into new territories, which is a little bit of eliminating the competition and also diversifying your revenues. Then we have product extension, finding new products, basically sending them in old territories. Again, you're enhancing your business model, diversifying your revenues. Whoops. Or we can move to a vertical integration based off the industry that you're in. We can go backwards and buy the supplier, or we can move forward and acquire the customer. So these are strategies that companies put out daily to go and enhance, their overall strength in the marketplace. So how do you do that? Well, there's two ways. You can do it in-house, examine exactly what is best for you and create an investment mandate, and then go ahead and execute it. Well, you can execute it by yourself, or you can hire an M&A advisor. But I can tell you this, the most critical part of this is that you need a solid integration team. So whatever business that you're going to acquire, you're going to be able to integrate it into your company in a very efficient manner. And I've seen a lot of business owners do-it-yourself, not have an integration team, and it becomes a train wreck and really hinders their company. So again, the goal is to buy low, right? So you may have a competitor in the marketplace that you can buy for 4 times, the EBITDA, which is maybe $1 million. Let's say that right now in the marketplace where your value at is 7 times. So you just by acquiring that company increase the value of $3 million through arbitrage. So that's the beauty of all this. Now, if this is like way too much for you, too risky for you, then there's another alternative. The other alternative is an outside partnership. And the outside partnership, you really have to think about what you really want to accomplish here. You have to determine your ending goal, because you're going to go out to the marketplace and seek a partner that probably is a private equity firm, and there's 3,000 out there. And everybody has a different way of doing it. Some only bring finance to the table. Some bring finance and operations skills to the table. Some are out there and they haven't really been there and done that. And there's others that are out there that have proven. So it's very important for you to really run a full M&A search process for you to find that right partner. And also it has to do with chemistry too. That management of the PE firm has to work very well with, you and your management team. So it's important to understand what they bring to the table. And I think a full process can help you on that. So here we are. We've kind of gone through this, and, obviously time horizon means a lot with your end in mind. If you have a long-term time horizon, 10 years plus, you can execute the value growth strategy real easy, within your time frame. But if you are, let's say, looking, to sell in the next, now in the next 6 months, you got to think about that selling process. Usually takes 6 to 12 months. So it's important for you to try to get ready for that process. And that readiness can take anywhere from 3 months to 3 years. It just depends on what the situation is with your company and, how much time you have to devote, to that. But I guarantee you that when you plan for the readiness, okay, it's going to certainly enhance and put dollars in your pocket from a liquidity standpoint. And also too, this readiness, and Tom mentioned it, right? There's also the personal readiness to it too. You have to be mentally okay, with letting go and going on to your next big adventure. whatever that is. And so during that process, owners, some are ready to go, but then others, have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So it's during that time period where you're becoming okay, and you're starting to get comfortable with your next chapter in life. Tom, you have anything to say with that?
I was just going to say, we got about 10, 12 minutes left. So if you want to try to get to Q&A here shortly.
Okay. All right. So if you really wanted to do that, this is really the exit planning process. You have an assessment phase, the design phase, value creation, timing, and transition. And again, it can be comprehensive or strategic. It just really depends on the runway that the owner has, the time frame that he or she has. So it kind of looks like this. So what we talked a lot about on the front end is the end in mind, right? So this is really the discovery phase. And you're going to go through all your goals that you want to achieve, and we're going to find out if there's anything that's going to prohibit that. So once we do that, now we're kind of getting an understanding of what your transfer motives are. And by understanding your transfer motives, then we can offer up what transfer channels are applicable. Now, looking at this chart, on the left-hand side are your internal transfer channels, and on the right-hand side are your external. So you may want to sell to your employees, or gift to your family, for that second generation, or sell your co-owners, or just sell outright, and go and hang out at the beach. That's all okay. What I want to share with you about this is that some advisors only know what they know. So if you go to a estate planning attorney, they're going to be very good at, the GRATs, the family limited partnerships, the intentional defective grantor trust. They're going to be very good with that, but they may not understand about private equity. And that may be one of the things that you want to be involved with. Another point to kind of share with you is that you can make combinations of these transfer channels to meet your end in mind. So I think it's very important for owners. They really don't know what's available that's out there. So as we go back to this, basically like Tom's group, when you get into the financial analysis part, they're going to do the financial planning. They're going to look at your long range goals, and then they're going to add up your assets, which are assets outside your business, and the value that we kind of determine in the business assessment, and put the two together to see if you can meet those long-term goals. And if you can, great. If not, then the owner and the advisors have to work together to figure out whether you lower your goals, or we're going to have a plan to increase that value, which of course, those are some of the things that we talked about earlier. But this is a great, outstanding process for any owner to engage with, so they can understand what they need to do to de-risk, themselves in order to achieve their goals and objectives. So then after that, once you have all that information, you decide whether you want to keep it or exit. And if you keep it, you go and improve the company. If you exit, then basically you sell it or go with the succession. And of course, this is a quick M&A process. And at the end of the day, as we go through all this, it is about your hierarchy of needs, your end in mind. The value of your business, we're trying to increase the value, harvest it in order to create emotional well-being for all your goals and objectives.
Great.
Questions?
So we'll go ahead and open up to questions here. I mean, you want to?
Yep. I think, Tom, you said you have a question.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. I'll go ahead and kick it off with a question. Steve, can you talk a little bit about a success story maybe that you've seen going, from that initial valuation, you went through the value acceleration methodology and what happened on the back end?
Sure, absolutely. So there's a manufacturing company, let's say in the central part of the United States, and they were very, let's just say, they were experts in what they do. And I wouldn't call it exactly a niche, but it wasn't a big space for this manufacturing industry, okay? But the owner, because of the nature, he was, very dominant, in his management. And we had to come in there and basically, assess what was going on and look at all the company specific risks that were there. And it took, a good 2 years for us to really put in a strong management team, to put in better financial controls, to incentivize the employees. And so really when we looked at it, it probably had about a 4 multiple, on the front end. But over time, when we got to complete everything, he turned it into a 6.5 multiple and sold out for $7.5 million.
That's great. No, that's fantastic. And, I'll tag onto that in the middle of a couple of conversations I'm having with my clients. They've been approached by a couple of firms to buy, and, they started off with one valuation. They went into LOI, and some of the questions that the financial buyer started figuring out was, this was a healthcare company, and it was a bit of a lab, and they didn't have a CFO. So that knocked down a little bit of valuation. They went through, and when they went through accounting, they didn't have audited financial statements. That knocked down the valuation. And so the time we started from an LOI down to an actual number that the buyer was wanting to extend and actually execute on, the deal fell apart because the business owner wasn't just personally ready and not ready, but also obviously not ready to sell, because when these people come in to purchase, they're ninjas. They know what they're doing. They speak the language. And I always joke with clients and potential clients of mine is that once you get to the LOI stage, the number's only going to go down, right, Steve?
Oh, totally. And right. And once you get to the LOI stage, your negotiating leverage drops off dramatically. And that's why it's really best to, have an intermediary in the process, whereas they're packaging it up. They understand really what the assets are of your business and the value that you're bringing to it. It's kind of like, these buyers come in and they're like an NFL football team. They're like the New England Patriots, right? And sometimes, the business owners, this is the first time they've done this, and it's almost like they're prepared like a high school football team, right? and sometimes it doesn't, look good. And so it's important for that business owner to build out, today, go and build out a business advisory team, a advisory team around the owners where they're meeting and they're helping that owner, plot out what his or her end in mind is so that they can chart a course to be able to get there.
That's great. Steve, we got 4 minutes left. I do have another question while we're waiting for some questions to come in on the chat box. But can you talk a little bit about recap? And we're talking about exit options and things like that. I find that people I'm dealing with, that's a really popular option right now. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. I kind of mentioned it, in stage 5 when we were doing acquisitions. Okay. And so basically a recapitalization is that the business owner is going out in the marketplace and finding really a partner to come in and partner up with him or her. And they're going to purchase the company, that partner, and they're going to usually purchase it and own about 70-80% of it. And they're requesting that the owner roll back some of the proceeds from the sale into it so they can have a partnership. Now, this is perfect for the owner who wants to take, let's say, some chips off the table, as we call it, in the marketplace, whereas, they're pushing, the value of their business. They get to a certain point, and depending upon their risk level of going forward, or maybe their management capabilities, they need to strengthen it. That's why they choose this recap, to try to get a financial and operational partner to come in to help then grow. So once that transaction takes place, then the mandate is to grow the company, similar to what I showed you. But one part is acquisition. So as time goes on, the 20% that the owner rolls in, okay, then becomes almost as valuable as the first half of the apple that took place there. And so that's a very popular strategy for owners. Certainly there's a lot of great, let's say that there's a lot of great private equity firms out there that have delivered that value, to owners. But again, it's very important for the owners to run a full process to see, who's out there. Because I can also tell you this. I sold a monument company up in the North Georgia area. And, the gentleman did both sides of the apple, first part and then the second part. And eventually it was sold to a strategic. It worked very beautifully. But they had good chemistry, the partnership. And so that's very, very important to have.
Steve, I think you just answered it, but one of the questions that came in is, where do you find recap opportunities? Private equity, search fund, or strategic buyers? But I think you said private equity groups, or what do you think?
Private equity groups, mainly. You have about 3,000 in the marketplace. And important that, of that 3,000 plus, you have some that you really need to vet out because they really haven't been proven. They may have some sponsorships behind them. And there's some what they call sponsor funds out there where you have a buyer who's a single buyer who wants to buy just one company, and he's being backed by several other what we call search funds. So it's important to understand who you're talking to. And I'll give you a perfect example. I had a new prospect call me. Okay, this is a couple of years ago, and I've shared this experience with you, Tom, before. Mm-hmm. He said, "Hey, Steve, can you help me? I got this private equity firm that wants to, buy my company." And I'm like, "Great, yeah. What have you done?" "Well, I signed an NDA." Okay. Well, what have you done, beyond that? "Well, I gave them my financials." I'm like, "Okay. Do you really know a lot about the company?" "No, not really." And he said, "Well, I got to tell you, 2 weeks later after I gave them my financials, I learned that they bought my competitor." Mistake, right? So it's important for owners to understand who you're talking to on the other side. But these recaps are a very valuable way of using other people's money, to grow your value.
Yeah, that's great. And as we wrap up, I'll echo that, because I think that also resonates with folks that maybe not boomers, right? Maybe a millennial business owner that's growing their business. And it's a way to get, second bite at the apple and a larger exit opportunity down the road and still be active. And I'm finding that's an option for a lot of people. So, but it's about 1:30. Amin, if there's no other questions, Yep. We'll turn it back over to you, Steve. Thanks so much. You did a great job going through it.
Appreciate it, everybody.
And there's a lot of requests for your presentation to be sent out. So we'll connect with Amin and make sure we get that out.
Correct. Thanks, Tom, for helping facilitate and inviting Steve to do a very thorough breakdown. Steve, you did a great job presenting. I think the process was very well defined, and I think you covered a lot of great points. I think we could have definitely done a deeper conversation on any one of those process points, because I know you could probably go in deeper. But with that, for all the attendees, thanks for joining. We will submit the recording on YouTube, and then also for anyone that attended. Aside from that, we do have our next monthly meeting coming up next Wednesday, so we'll send you information about that as well. But with that, we'll go ahead and conclude the meeting. Steve, again, thank you. Tom, thank you as well. Thank you. Have a great rest of the weekend, rest of the day, and rest of the weekend. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. See ya.
Take care.